bisexual hot girl, bisexual hot man. You guys are so lucky. This is going to be a fun conversation. Kelsey and I are on a ship called Ovation of the Seas. We're in the middle of New Zealand, Australia.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where. And this gorgeous, gorgeous girl we met it's been about 4 or 5 days since we ran into each other.
Yeah, about that time.
And you know how they say it's terrible manners to jump into a conversation when you're not invited? That's kind of how we became friends, because they were having a conversation and I heard the word trans, and you looked very passionate about when you were talking about it. And as a bisexual man, when I see an attractive person like you, I'm like, oh, okay. So your hormones first take place. And then when you become friends, and then you realize there's so much more of a conversation that you can actually have.
Yeah.
So full disclosure, I have already gotten to know her a little bit. I already know about her life. But I'm hoping that you're able to explain to us in India on the podcast today about so much about sexuality, because I keep saying, like, India, we're about close to 10, 20 years behind on the gay rights movement.
Okay. In Australia, I think we're a lot more ahead. So the one thing that I'll say about sexuality, gender, anything, is it's so much more fluid than what people who don't really understand it care to think about or know about. So for me, I tell people I'm bisexual, but my sexuality has always been so fluid and changing. And in Australia, it's much more accepted to be out as queer, as LGBTQ. So really, I feel kind of unlabeled and fluid, but in reality, when I meet people, I'll just say it bi.
So for the sake of this conversation, I'm going to be a devil's advocate once in a while, ask you questions that, we were actually discussing this. For a lot of people sometimes, they have questions about sexuality, about gender, and they may not necessarily be asking these questions out of discrimination, out of spite, but out of sheer curiosity. I remember, like, back home in India, when a lot of my friends would tell me, Kelsey, you're such a good-looking guy, you can get any girl. Why are you interested in boys? And I would say, people don't turn gay because they're not getting girls, right? That's not it. So for me, a lot of that is that. Now, the gender conversation is a conversation which is interesting for me because I also don't understand it. I always say I'm an activist, but I'm more of an activist of the LGB.
Yes.
The T is a different conversation.
I'm not trans myself, so obviously I've just met a lot of trans people, and they've really helped me out. A lot of the time they're so sweet, and in America, which is passed on to Australia where I am, trans people, specifically trans black women, were the ones to fight for our rights. So I think it's so important to include them when you're talking about LGBTQ.
So the reason I'm asking you more about trans is because I think you've been a little more educated about it, because now India is, as a country, we are one of the handful of the countries in the world, and I'm very proud of this. We recognize the third gender. Now, but the spin-off of that also means that from our political and legal mindset, we're also then somewhere saying that means there are 3 genders. You're saying there's a male, there's a female, and there's an other. So it becomes 2 binary and 1 non-binary. I also feel sometimes in that context, I'm also of the opinion when people say there's 150 genders, I'm a cat, I'm a mouse, I'm a peacock. That's a bit much. Where do you stand on that?
I stand on that. I think a lot of people, like, gender is a spectrum, and there's a lot of people that have different experiences, but you will always get that person who takes I can identify as anything as a joke to take away from trans validity.
Correct.
So trans people are valid, but if you're making it a joke, if you're not being sincere in how you feel, if you don't really believe it about yourself, then you're taking away from the trans movement, I fully believe. You know what I mean? We want to be taken seriously. Trans people want to be taken seriously. Queer people, gay people want to be taken seriously. And people have tried to include bestiality in LGBTQ. Do you know what that is?
When you're trying to have sex with an animal. How is that a...
It's... For some people, it's a fetish. It's an immoral fetish, and it's assaulting and raping animals. It's not a part of LGBTQ.
No, of course not. The B does not stand for bestiality.
No, bisexuality.
The B is the
like
bisexual
us.
part. Don't turn my letter into something else. That unfortunately always happens. In any movement, there will always be something that goes wrong. In fact, for example, in the movement of feminism, while it may have started off as equality, for a lot of people in India, we have this problem where a lot of, I feel like today the worst person to be on the planet is to be a cisgendered male guy because you have zero political rights, you have zero legal rights. Sometimes it can work to a disadvantage for you if people want to take advantage of the privilege that the LGBT or the feminists get. There's always
Yeah.
a gray area. The other thing I always say is if we fought so hard to say that the movement of love is love means that everyone is equal, that means just like a straight person can be good and bad, a gay person can also be good and bad. So I've always made sure that we tell people to know just because someone says they're gay or bi does not mean they have to all be halo on the head, because you will have people who are manipulative. And gender
100%.
and your sexuality does not make you a good or bad person. And that's so
Exactly.
important. I've met enough people who are terrible people regardless of their gender and sexuality. And I met people who are great regardless of it. Why is it that the regular straight guy is so fascinated with watching two lesbians making love?
Oh my goodness. I think for them maybe they're just attracted to women. I've seen men who are into queer women, and I think they're just fetishizing them, like women who are into watching gay porn. Do it in your own time, but please don't make lesbians or gay men uncomfortable, because
Uncomfortable.
as you said, being gay is something that you can't control. And you're never, it's so embarrassing, in my opinion, when I hear people who fully believe that they can convert a lesbian into liking men or a gay man into liking women. It just doesn't work that
It
way.
doesn't
We have
work.
no control over
Yeah.
who we like. Love is love in our own forms.
To play the other, like I said, the devil's advocate, sometimes I feel again, there's a lot of, I think the movement back home in India also, we're also trying to make sure a lot of the stuff that we could be doing wrong as a community we fix. This is not something I've seen with a lot of girls who may be gay, but I've seen a lot of gay boys constantly almost showing off the fact that they've been turning straight guys gay and bi. And I also feel that's also a weird conversation because you may not be turning someone, they probably are just experiencing that with you. But since you said sexuality is not a choice, since you and I both sort of go with the bi label, you and I have a little more choice than a gay guy or a
Yeah.
girl. So you and I can choose, all right, I'm attracted to the guy and I'm attracted to the girl. I'll tell you where in my life, Kelsey, that took a bit of a where I had to make that choice was because again I am a bit of a traditionalist where if I were straight, I assure you with the success that I'm enjoying in life, thanks to God, I would have definitely been quite happy to have a child, to get married. So because I'm actually someone who enjoys having sex with women, if I choose, I do have the choice to be able to make that choice,
Yeah.
which is not a choice a lot of gay men have and
Yeah.
gay women have. In fact, the first conversation we had, I was telling Kelsey, where a lot of the women don't have that privilege because a guy can just say, look, I'm gay. I'm not even going to get hard. I'm not going to get a boner. My body will physically not react to you, so I can't get married to a woman. Whereas in India, there are so many women who will be forced into marriage because their people will just say, just lie there. Your husband's going to just sleep with you. And you had a very strong reaction to that, I remember.
Yeah. I think that people don't understand that that is asking a woman to be okay with rape. If you think about someone that you are, to try and help other people understand, if you were to think of someone that you are completely repulsed by, completely would not have any sexual reaction, to ask you to just lay there and to really play it out into your heads to try and build some sympathy and understanding again, it's really repulsing. You know what I mean? You wouldn't want that. That's rape. And to me, it doesn't make sense why that is a necessity. I get that homophobes don't like gay people, but at the end of the day, what happens behind closed doors, it does not
Doesn't
affect you. And I think my morals, or what I prioritize, is just kindness and love. And if you don't like something about someone,
Move on. Don't focus on something else.
move on.
Um, like one of the things that I know, so the last 4 or 5 months for the gay movement across the world have been touted as one of the most regressive times in modern history. We've been on a cruise, so in case uh, you're a little out of it also, China has suddenly launched a whole bunch of laws completely prohibiting any form of representation of the LGBT community on any of their mainstream media. Our friend Donald Trump has gone back and talked about the fact that trans people now cannot be part of the military. Um, the in Spain, which was considered one of the most LGBT friendly countries, in Barcelona, a lot of gay men have been recently attacked on the pretext of the fact that they're drug peddlers, and there's been a crackdown on that. Google and Meta are removing things like Pride Month from their calendar, and now this has all happened in the last 4 or 5 months. Now, while it is very tempting for us as activists to be like, hey, they're all coming behind us, they're attacking us, one of the things that I think Kelsey and I really bonded on was to realize that the fight has to not be so much with entitlement and to ask for it, it has to be with love. Now, the reason that's happened a lot is because of the fact that you must have seen that the gender conversation has been a trigger for a lot of people to go anti the movement. You must have seen a lot of people really yelling, screaming, shouting, saying, you got my pronouns wrong, da da da. And they almost seem like they've gone bizarre and they make the rest of us look bad. And even my take on that as an activist is, on the one hand, we say gender is flexible, that means it's not important. While on the other hand, we also have some people who are fighting so much for the gender. So there is a bit of a mismatch. You know, in India, I find this so interesting where a lot of the guys who say clothes don't identify your gender, the moment a guy says, now I want to be a woman, the first thing they do put is makeup, lipstick, and hair extensions. So then there is a bit of a dichotomy there in the way they think. The reason I'm giving you this perspective is because what is it, when we look at India, and a lot of it is India centered because I want our people to sort of whatever. When we look at India, there is so much confusion in our head about gender and sexuality, and they're two completely different things. You guys have a better handle on that.
Yeah, I think we have more people who feel comfortable with being out.
Mm-hmm.
And no, I completely understand. When you're an activist, you've got to look into where are these people coming from? What is the most effective way to help them to understand kindness and to not oppress us? I think I understand some people saying, you know, if you want to be trans, you should look a certain way. But on the other hand, I think gender has nothing to do with your presentation. I think the only thing that decides it is how you really feel internally. And, you know, a lot of people, it's trans person to trans person, they'll present differently, they'll have different methods, different things that make them feel more feminine or masculine or gender non-conforming at all.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I think in our country, people who see it and are more familiar with it, they start to become more accepting, and that's why I think it's good for people to hear about it. But yeah,
So
it's
we have an advantage in India because the trans community, as it is now known, as part of even our mythology, as part of our history, we've always had, there's something called Ardhanareshwar. Ardh means in the middle. Nareshwar is someone that means it's in the middle of a man and a woman. All right, I could be breaking the word down incorrectly, but Ardhanareshwar means somebody who's a cross section between the man and the woman. So culturally, for us, it was not a new phenomena. In fact, it's the transsexual people who the blessings we seek when you're getting married, when you're having a baby, is usually that community. So we have actually had them integrated into our life system very easily. So the trans problem, in my opinion, in India, we've been very lucky, has not been an issue. In fact, if anything at all, they have enjoyed the respect and the reverence of, because it's almost something which you sort of worship to, which is so
nice.
lovely. So in India, we don't really have that problem. Now the newer trans movement, which has basically been a lot of guys who simply wear a sari and say I'm a woman, that has been a problem.
Ah,
So I also do advocate the fact that, because now what's happening is it's also infringing on women's rights. For example, what happened with Leah Thompson, the swimmer in America, which is a biological man who simply declared I'm a woman, went out and won all the women's sport. Things like that got people to start losing respect and the validity of the movement, because you said a guy can just turn around and say, listen, I'm a chick, and listen, I'm going to compete here. And there was a lot that sort of happened. So there is a bit of a problem there. Also, I'm a bit of a traditionalist. I don't see anything wrong with genders, right? I'm a bisexual man. So my sexuality is the fact I'm attracted to both genders, but I'm very happy being the male form. I'm attracted to the feminine form. I'm attracted to the male form. So I also feel it's so important. That's just my opinion. But the fact that while the trans community, the LGBT community, where we talk about whatever, but you can't just say also if for the straight guys, it's okay for them to enjoy their genders. There's nothing wrong with that as long as they're not discriminating. Is that
Yeah.
something which also you see in Australia a lot? Because I think your community is a lot more open. I went to the gay saunas. Oh my god, the hottest boys naked chilling, and the vibe was very different. Are there also lesbian saunas?
Um, I'm not sure about any lesbian saunas. I wish I knew when I was single, but um, what were you asking again?
The question I had was about the gender. Like a lot of the LGBT movement, I realized across the Western world, instantly equates to the trans conversation, which
Ah,
is not necessarily for us because I am not like I'm a. Am I cisgender? I am cisgender. I think that
yeah,
label.
you're
Yeah,
cisgender.
but I don't need to have feathers and eyelashes and this and that. But unfortunately, when you see the Pride movement, the only thing you're seeing is men who want to cross dress. And somewhere in India, that also has because a lot of people then say, so people look at me and say, but you're straight, right? Because they think straight means someone who wants to dress like a regular bloke and gay is someone who's a transgender person. So the two wires have got crossed somewhere in our communication,
Ah,
which I understand because that's why I said gender and sexuality are two different things. But you guys, but I realize that the trans movement does dominate the conversation a lot more.
I think for trans people, they are kind of the most oppressed group
Hmm.
outside of any inside of racial contexts and gay people. Trans people are taking the hit in the world right now. So I think that they're dominating the conversation maybe
To do
because
that.
they're really taking the hit with being the most oppressed group in the world right now. And so I do think if you're a gay person, it's really important to bring them up like they've brought
Like
us up
that.
historically. I don't know what the history of trans and gay rights and activism is in your country, but
Like I said, the third gender enjoys recognition. We have a lot of places in India where there is a bathroom for others, as they're
yeah.
called. Like I said, there are people who are worshipped in any festivity. They are part of the culture. Um, One of the most incredible things for me back home, uh, which is something which sometimes makes me almost wish I were straight, is the
Yeah.
fact that we do come from that value system where I feel like when you're gay, and I count us both as good looking people, shallow as that sounds, that means we have a lot of options. It's the fact that, there isn't really a reason for us to settle down. And now I'm 40, I would have been very happy with one partner if we don't have civil rights in India, so I can't marry another guy. But sometimes the traditionalist mindset of saying, we've got these big businesses, we have the big homes, I would like someone to sort of carry my name forward. That is something which definitely sort of makes me think a little bit more. Now, when I met you for the first time, what I thought was very interesting was um, the fact that you said a lot of people discriminate because they don't understand. This is almost going to be your masterclass to understand so that when you have a question, you can sort of come back and ask. Okay? So let's
Yeah.
get into that because there will be a lot of stuff that you'll be able to explain, which means for a lot of people who don't know who to bloody go and ask,
Yeah.
because the other thing I've realized is sometimes the trans community, the LGBT community can be touchy when you ask a question because they've gone through so much trauma. They perceive your question as an attack, which it may not be. So let's try and kill that. Okay, let's go with the simple ones. An FTM, which is what I know, is a female to male, is a guy, no, is a woman. An FTM is
So
a
was do you know the term AFAB, assigned female at birth?
assigned female at birth. All right.
Yeah, so they were assigned female at birth because of their sex, and then they've transitioned to male, so now they're a guy,
Now they're a guy.
practically.
And anatomically, for example, when a guy transitions to being a girl, in fact, I had a very good fortune when I used to be at Senan in India. We shot with this person who was the first uh, transitioned person in India. And
Yeah.
what a story. And I remember when we were shooting with her, there was no pronoun, so she would go by her, right? And so because she transitioned. And, she said, everyone talked about the transition being so good, but I am unhappy after the transition because while I thought my life would change, while you might anatomically fix everything, you can't give birth to a baby. Right? The same way, when a girl transitions to being a guy, this actually, even I don't know, you can't have a penis that goes erect, right? So there is still an anatomic, that is true? That's correct?
I'm not sure about that actually.
There you
Haven't
go. Because see,
researched
you know,
it.
like, and so if I, so very often what happens is, say, if I meet someone who's like, when you ask them a question, you really want to know what's between the legs, and that conversation can be very dicey because, again, so then you and I are on the same question where we asking out of nothing but curiosity because I want to educate myself. So if you know this, please tell us because I want to have these conversations because people are right when they say I don't know what's going on. So you think it's hate, it's not. I really don't know what it is.
Yeah, no, I think people just they want to understand,
Yes.
and when they don't, they they ask some rude questions, but I think it's because they don't really know.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important if you're trying to get people to understand, again, we've agreed on this,
Yes.
to stay kind.
To stay
To
kind. So India, we have
just
an
really
advantage
educate.
where I know in the West, if say you tell me I don't want to talk about something, I'll just leave you alone. In India, we're not like that. If you say I don't want to talk about something, I'm upset. I'm like, hey, come on. It'll make you feel better. Talk. So we can be a lot more persuasive. So our boundary lines of physical touch, of emotional touch is a lot more. If I'm upset, if I tell my friends leave me alone, they're not leaving me alone.
Yeah.
And I like that about our people. In fact, we were just talking yesterday, where I realized, you know, when you also travel the world, you're also seeing different cultures. I will say this about India: the new Indian like me, we are willing to not blend in. I will carry my value system. I've realized in the West, especially with a lot of the white people, I think physical space and touching is such a big deal.
It's really
It
up to,
is.
yeah,
Yeah,
it
it
is
is.
much more of a bigger deal.
In India, not at all. That's also because I think from the lens, it's been sexualized. In India, for example, when you meet an elder person, you first touch their feet. So there's physical contact. An elder person, when they meet you, they will touch your forehead. There's physical contact, that's to bless you. When you meet someone, you hug them. The namaste is when I haven't met you before, but after that, you can be sure that there's some physical contact. In India, if I have a friend who has a baby, I will not think twice about holding this kid, hugging them, because none of it has been sexualized. Unlike in the West, when I'm around white people, I don't go and grab people's babies because I know they see it from a different lens. So I do feel that our innocence is something, and I'm saying this to all the Indians, please hold on to it. So when I travel the world and people talk about over sexualizing the touch, you have to make them understand that your ethos is different and the Indian value system in that space is beautiful.
Yeah.
So, and I think and I say this jokingly, I always feel like the West eventually catches up to the Asian values. Where now when I'm seeing people talking about portable bidets, I'm like, we've been washing ourselves with water for years together. You're the ones who've been using paper. So you know, there's always things that we learn back and forth. The West has
Yeah.
taught us incredible things. There's a lot of stuff that we have learned, and democracy, the idea was not a, it was a Western idea that sort of came in.
Yeah.
And these conversations are really fun. When you're a bisexual woman, uh, your sexual interest and your romantic interest is more with women or with men?
Well, obviously I'm 18 at the moment, so historically before 17, I was only engaging with women.
Okay.
You know, I had crushes on men, and then for a while I was a lesbian. So this is what I'm saying about sexuality being so fluid. And then I tried men, and then I moved on to men again, but I'm still very much bisexual, and it is so fluid. So I was so sure that I was a lesbian for so long, and women was my only interest. I didn't look at men, but here I am with a man. You know what I mean?
So help me bust a myth. Like for a lot of people, they tell me, say, listen, it must be so easy to date a guy. He will pay for his food. He will pay for his own drink because the traditional gender role is the guy has to pay for a lot of stuff. And I think, you know, we were joking about the fact that the young, the modern age guy is like, I want the princess treatment. I don't want to be taken care of all the time. So, but, and I keep telling people saying, I know you think if it's two guys, it'll be all smooth sailing. But somewhere the whole, I know it's a gender role is weird, but somewhere it does still come into play where the romance is still the same, the love is still the same. You know, between, so just like in guys, and this is actually more of a question. Like in guys, you do have a top and a bottom. So you'll have this one person who's got more feminine energy and more male energy.
Yeah.
With women, I have now this could be a stereotype, but you do have. Is it necessary that you have one person who's more butch? Is that a politically correct term to use? Who's more sort of
Yeah.
masculine, and what's the other one called?
Some people we use more commonly masc and femme.
Femme.
So there is such thing as femme for femme relationships where it's two feminine women. There's masc for femme, where a masculine woman and a feminine woman, and masc for masc, which is more rare usually, but two masculine. So, and as you were saying about the gender roles and things like that, it's always different. I notice a lot of straight people like the girl to be pampered and have princess treatment. And some masc for femme relationships.
Oh, not my male hetero buddies. They're like, listen, we want women to pay for their own drinks.
Oh
We want
yeah,
them to,
there's that
because,
as well.
because also what's happened is right now, look, it's everyone who's really young, it has become difficult. And,
Yeah.
we're also at a point where we're just like, listen, I love you, but I don't want to be your sponsor. And I agree with that. Also, even with women, like with cisgendered women, at the one point you're saying you're strong, independent women, we want to be able to take care of yourself. But when the bill comes, you just like, you want to start putting your lipstick, and that's not fair. You can't have a double standard for that. So equal rights means equal responsibility. And that thing that's so important.
Yeah.
What about, okay, let me put this from an Indian lens, where in India, no matter what you have done, what you've accomplished, the thing is, until you're married, you have not really arrived as an individual. You're not settled. In Australia, is marriage a big thing? Like you're out your parents, obviously.
Yeah.
So are they concerned about the fact that, oh man, come on, you're having fun, but are you going to settle down? Are you going to get married? Is that a thing? Is that a conversation?
Not really. I mean, I live with my mum, and I'm so grateful because she's really understanding. No matter who I'm with, she's just happy
Just
for me
happy.
to be happy. You know, other parts of my family is a different story. You know, and I know a lot of queer people. They have family that's not supportive,
Uh-huh.
and it's difficult.
It is difficult. Like in India, if you're at a wedding, every single auntie of yours will be trying to find a match for you. So if
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
so if you're
I've
a
heard
guy
about
of
this.
certain age, every little girl they say like, oh, this one is good and that one is good. So our aunts are usually they're our version of Tinder.
Yeah.
They're like the ancient version or familial version of Tinder. But I don't think marriage is that big as a concept.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it's not, because I've not seen that even with straight people. I've not seen that as a go-to.
Yeah.
Right?
People have their own reasons for being in relationships, but it's not really a cultural expectation. You know what I mean? We don't need to be in a relationship. Some people are single up until old age.
Yeah.
Some people love to be in relationships. So yeah, we're a little bit different in that way.
All right, tell me about cruising. Now, this is your first cruise from what you have told me.
Yes.
Right? And if you and I met outside of this cruise, first of all, we would not have had that opportunity to spend as much time. Here, no matter what happens, she can't escape me. I keep running into her every 5 minutes. What have you liked about it?
I've really liked, and I think you've liked the same thing. We've talked about it, just meeting different people from all over the world. You know, me living in Brisbane, it's my first cruise. I'm not used to meeting so many different sorts of people. Meeting you was great.
Likewise, yeah.
Yeah. Everyone's.
You
just
think in
been-
terms of acceptance, it's easier on a cruise for people to come out as, because so I will tell you this, because we are friends and we've been in circles. I have slept with a lot of people on this cruise as well who are not out. So from the Indian perspective, I think anyone who's white is a lot more outgoing, but that's not necessarily the case. Like we always think that Europeans are very out. That's actually not true. A lot of them are very closeted.
Yeah.
So but what one of the guys told me here was, he said it's so easy for me to be out on a cruise because I may never see these people. So I kind of have the liberty of just being able to be myself.
Yeah.
That must be liberating.
Yeah, that's really, again, I'm the type of person that thinks I'm never going to see these people again. Might as well tell them, you know.
Yeah.
A lot of people have asked me about my sexuality and things, and I'll just tell them I'm not going to meet them again, you know. They're just interested to know, again, just trying to educate people. But yeah, no, I think it's been great.
It's been great.
I think a lot of people back home are closeted, and even in white culture where being gay is more accepted and being LGBTQ is more accepted, there are still a lot of people, especially men, I find, that are closeted. Have you heard of like internal homophobia? Things like that?
Wait,
I
tell me
think
what that is. What is that? What does that term translate to? Internalized homophobia, right?
internalized
Yeah, what is that?
homophobia. It's where you might not be experiencing homophobia towards you from other people, but you kind of, I used to experience this as well. You feel like it's okay for other people to be gay, but not yourself. You know, you think, some people think it infringes on their value, you know, they're scared that they're not going to be respected. And so it's, internal homophobia is something a lot of people experience, and I think that that's a lot of the reason why they don't.
They feel like it
Feel
makes them a little bit lesser than they are.
Yeah.
I was,
bet.
we were in New York,
Yeah.
and as you have noticed, I make friends very easily. I'd be walking around, and there were these big, like, black guys, right? They were huge, like these street, almost like these, not like thugs, because I don't mean in a bad way, but these big guys who would sort of take you on. And I'd become friends with them because I'd be walking in New York very often. And there was this one guy who would usually just be nasty to me half the time. And like on this cruise, we have this one person who's been quite annoying. And today, when we were talking about it, I said, she must have gone through something because most people. So anyway, when he was being bad to me all the time, and I'm very confident, I said, like, bro, what's up with you? Like, somebody hurt you, hurt your feelings. What's up? What's going on? And he very cutely tells me, he says, look, I'm actually gay. And to add to that, I'm a flaming bottom. And it's just that if my bros find out that not only am I gay, I like to give my ass, my street cred is going to come down.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of that sort of translates to demonstrating internalized homophobia, where he feels like him sort of talking his truth will somewhere make him feel less of a gangster because you're like, whatever. And I think, is that it?
Yeah, I think that's a different thing. So maybe he does experience internal homophobia because obviously he's scared. But it sounds like this man is worried that his life will be
Different.
made worse. It will be made different.
Yeah.
Change and coming out is such a scary thing. And for him, he's probably right. He probably would get treated worse. And that's the problem because he's still a gay man, but he would get treated worse if he were to come out.
I find, in my opinion, I'm being honest with you, I've always had a chip on my shoulder. I've been privileged. I have never faced anyone making me feel bad about my sexuality. So I understand that there's a lot of struggles I don't understand. Right?
Yeah.
I'm aware of that. For a lot of people, when they talk about the struggles they're going through, it's also kind of funny because the people who've been the best to me have been my straight buddies.
Really?
They're always your allies. They see a guy who's cute,
Nice.
they'll do it. You can be open with them. You've seen me on the cruise, all my friends. In fact, I've never really been part of the LGBT circles because while we say love is love, if I'm going to start making friendships based on gender, that's also in my head a disservice because I want to make friends because I'm making friends. Sexuality and gender has nothing to do with it.
Exactly.
So I find that my straight buddies are usually much more supportive, less problematic. The drama that's always come into my life has been from other people who are on the spectrum. And the politics sort of comes in there. And I always talk about the fact that I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that they are not comfortable in their own skin. So everything becomes a problem because most people who are happy about who they are very rarely create an issue. And I
Yeah.
realized very quickly, a lot when we were talking about this, a lot of gay men started saying yes, because a regular straight guy, sometimes the only thing they need to know is you're not going to hit on them. So if I'm sitting with you, this is fine. If I start touching you inappropriately and whatever, then your trust in me as a friend is going to go away.
Yeah.
So I find that a lot of my straight, and anyone who's straight is usually like a big muscle guy, and I'm not into that, so they become my friends. So for me, my biggest allies have been my straight buddies.
Yeah. For me, it's the best feeling when a straight person just doesn't question your sexuality.
don't care.
They hear about it. They don't care. Just meeting people for who they are. And that's why I love to make, like you said, gay friends, straight friends.
Yeah. In fact,
all of these different.
like a lot of my blokes will now tell me, saying, listen, I think like being gay is better. You seem to have much more sex than, the straight people, so we laugh about that. But this is also a shout out to people because I also feel sometimes, and I want to really say this, jokes aside, I also feel a lot of straight people feel that people from the community just think that you guys are all haters, that you're all homophobes, and that's not true. Like the other day when you were sitting, the drama girl, when she walked in, she said, I hate boys, they're all terrible. And those generalizations are also horrible because that's not true. You've got enough people who are great, you've got enough people who are bad. That has nothing to do with gender and sexuality.
Whether you're straight, cis, trans, no matter what you are, the only thing that I would choose to judge you for is your character.
Correct.
And making these assumptions, like basing people's character in your head off of what they look like, what they identify as, it's so dangerous. And you're going to stop yourself from making great friendships. Like connecting with different people. It's all... You're preventing yourself from having a great time and meeting some cool people and learning some cool things if you're going to say, oh, I hate men.
Yeah.
Because while there are some men that are bad, there are some men that are great. And it's just like gay people and straight people, there are always going to be some bad and some good in everyone.
I actually, when I think about it, I don't really have that many gay friends because I'm one who's gay, and if they're part of what I attract, then I'm sexually involved with them. Most of and I do have some gay friends who are also gay, but most of my buddies actually have been straight buddies, and they're great, and they'll look at a guy like, hey, listen, I think he really likes you, go do something, and they'll wingman you. I'll have threesomes with my buddies, which is usually with women, and that usually happens. It's fun. So I want you to know that the whole, if you're straight, it doesn't mean that we think that you're out to get us with spears and arrows and whatnot. That's not really the case. I know you said you had a lot of things that you felt like saying. I may have not asked you a couple of things because sometimes it comes up in a conversation. Something that, because I know you said you had something in mind, and if I haven't gotten on it, anything that off.
Well, I think we've gotten into a lot of it, but all I wanted to say, if someone listening right now is a queer person in India where it's not as much accepted, I'm rooting for you. We are rooting for you. We love you. And if you don't have anyone supportive in your life, don't take it to heart. I know being queer and not being accepted it fringes on people's mental health so much. But my best advice to you is to try and find some people that accept you. Try and find some people that see you for who you are. And we love you. And if you're a straight person that's listening to this and has remained open-minded, thank you so much. We appreciate you listening in on the conversation. We understand if you have concerns. We're just here to educate you.
So the India part, I actually want to tell you, it's not that it's not accepted. In fact, on the contrary, in India, it's very liberal. We don't have these issues. Where it's not. So in fact, it's on the contrary. Like I said, we recognize the third gender. It's not a big deal. Nobody's really going out to get you. It's been decriminalized. So in fact, what's different for us is we don't have any of the additional issues that have sort of come about.
Yeah.
I want to finally end this podcast with one thing I want to talk about. The reason I do these conversations, people ask me why do you do these conversations. You and I were open and you can talk about some stuff. We may have a lot of things that are not on our chest. I'm going to tell you something that happened on this cruise, okay? And this is on a parting note. Someone from the staff walked up to me one day and said, of course, in bad English, said, I'm also a gay. So I want to explain to them there's no a gay, you are just gay. But he came to me very sweetly. He said, I'm also someone who's homosexual. He's married. He's got kids. And he says, watching all these conversations gives him so much strength because what he said was, he said, living that lie, that means he can never really truly be who he is difficult. They have conversations that they can't have with people.
Yeah.
And I think what this does, it has a dialogue of saying, hey, you're not alone. There's a whole bunch of people fighting your fight. And trust me, being gay is not the only fight. An obese person has that problem. Someone who's losing hair has that problem. Somebody has psoriasis has that problem. You have erectile dysfunction. You've got that problem. You're poor. You've got that problem. There is always a problem that someone has. So if you're gay, that's not a problem. It can be a badge of honor. I'm a CEO, I'm an entrepreneur. I wear it like a badge of honor saying, I've never thought of it as an issue. In fact, if anything at all, it is one additional thing where I feel like we can do more.
Yeah.
So I feel like don't treat it like a disease because it's not. In fact, if anything at all, I think when you see good-looking people like us, it's like, listen, you only get to sleep with one gender. We got so many more. We can have so much more fun.
I'm so proud to be gay. And I feel like I get to sleep with whoever I want to.
Yeah. How cool is that?
It's such a privilege. You know what I mean?
I want
It's freeing.
my business partner.
Yeah.
I was on a call with him. First of all, how stupid of him to take calls of mine on a speakerphone. I am the one person who say the absolute most nonsense, so you should never talk to me on a speaker. I was talking to him the other day and he was in the car with his mum, his dad and his wife, who are all very conservative Punjabi family. And I must have said in Hindi about, I banged this guy like mad, but I said it in Hindi. He says to me, for the next half an hour, nobody said a word in that car. So that was kind of funny. I really hope you've enjoyed this conversation with Kelsey and I. I'm hoping to stay in touch with you. I'm hoping we get on another cruise together. I hope you cruise a lot. I was teaching you how to gamble this morning, actually. I was like, hey, you got to get free cruises.
I wish I wasn't cut off because I want to win a free cruise. I really hope to see you again as well.
Yeah. And keep doing what you're doing. I know you're fighting with love, and I think that always goes a long way. But really, when I have questions, I will keep asking you. And I hope you come to India. It'll be really cool. And
I would love to go to India.
Experience the country. It's a gorgeous country. We are the most populous country in the world. So you've met a lot of people, and I hope you have incredible experiences. The podcast is called the Big Pucci Podcast. Big means big, Pucci means a kiss. So we normally sign off with saying Big Pucci. Do it, Kelsey. Yeah.
Big Pucci.
Namaste. Did you have fun?
It was very fun. Yeah. It was good to talk to you.